بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lessons on نواقض الإسلام of Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah. Last week we finished the first nullifier, and this week inshallah we'll move to the second, where the author rahimahullah he says الثاني, the second nullifier from the nullifiers of Islam, من جعل بينه وبين الله وسائط يدعوهم ويسألهم الشفاعة ويتوكل عليهم كفر إجماعا. He says rahimahullah, the second nullifier from nullifiers of Islam is that a person places between himself and Allah intermediaries, wasa'it, which he, number one, invokes them, number two, asks them for intercession, and number three, puts his trust in them. And then he says, whoever does this has disbelieved by consensus. So here the Shaykh rahimahullah is continuing from the last nullifier, another example of shirk. But he mentioned it separately, as we'll see why. So here the author, the example he gave is shirk. And we said before, all nullifiers of Islam go back to three: major shirk, major kufr, and major nifaq, major hypocrisy. So nullifiers 1 and 2 are examples of major shirk, shirk akbar. So the reason why he separates them is because this second one we're talking about today has great importance for the ummah because people fall into it. So scholars say the Shaykh al-Islam, even though this is the same category, both of them are shirk, he puts him to two because number one, he wants to emphasize the danger of shirk. And number two, due to the fact that most people, they fall into shirk by way of dua, because he mentioned they call upon them. So here we can see that he separates them. So Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says most of the shirk of the alam, of the alameen, of the people, is by way of dua to other than Allah. So if you look carefully, people are supplicating to people other than Allah, at the graves, to the absent, to the dead. So we begin first, but what is meant by wasa'it? It means shufa'a. Al-wasa'it is intermediaries or people who are going to intercede for you. In what? في جلب النفع ودفع الضر, to bring you benefit or to remove harm. So wasa'it or wasa'it, the plural, is anybody who's going to be your intercessor. يعني wasa'it and sa'it. Right? So here wasa'it and wasita. Wasa'it and wasita, afwan. So shafi', someone who's going to intercede, or shufa'a. So this person who you've taken between you and Allah as intermediary, you're doing it fi jalb al-naf', you want them to bring you a benefit, or daf' al-durr, you want them to protect you from harm. So in many ways you put them there to get you something or to deflect something from you. So for those reasons, anyone who makes dua to them or asks them, make talab, seeks something from them instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is what the Shaykh is talking about. And we're going to see the categories. Shaykh al-Islam Abdul Qaadir rahimahullah took this from Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. So all the scholars agree that this is a nullifier and it's a major shirk. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he writes in Majmu' Fatawa, volume 1, page 121, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَتَّخِذُوا الْمَلَائِكَةَ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ أَرْبَابًا يَأْمُرُكُمْ. So here Allah says, we didn't command you to take the malaika and the prophets as arbab, as deities besides Allah. So Shaykh al-Islam says, فَبَيَّنَ سُبْحَانَهُ, Allah has clarified in this verse, أَنِ اتِّخَاذِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ أَرْبَابًا كُفْرٌ فَمَنْ جَعَلَ الْمَلَائِكَةَ وَالْأَنْبِيَاءَ وَسَائِطَ يَدْعُوهُم وَيَتَوَكَّلُ عَلَيْهِمْ وَيَسْأَلُهُم جَلْبَ الْمَنَافِعِ وَدَفْعَ الْمَضَارِ مِثْلَ أَنْ يَسْأَلُهُم غُفْرَانَ الذنب وهداية القلوب وتفريج الكروب وسد الفاقات فهو كافر بإجماع المسلمين. So this is exactly the wording where he takes it from. So here we see that all of this the Shaykh is talking about is un-Islamic, it's shirk, major shirk, and now we're going to see the categories. Before continuing, when we talk about the first thing that you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to have intermediaries between you and Allah. Islam is special in that we ask Allah directly. مَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. That's our deen. Ask Allah directly. Christians, Jews, others, they have أَرْبَابٍ دُونِ. So Christians, the Catholics, they ask the Pope or the confessors. The Jews, they ask the rabbis. The rabbis have the ability to forgive and to pardon or to legislate even. As Muslims, we don't do that. But now, if somebody is supplicating to other than Allah, what does dua mean? The ulama say dua in Arabic language, huwa nida, is to call. Dua huwa nida. Just to supplicate means to call out to somebody. And in the Quran and Sunnah, whenever you hear the word dua, it's used in two ways, two categories. Dua al-mas'ala wa dua al-ibadah. And some of us, we know we covered this before. Dua al-mas'ala, the dua of invocation. The dua of invocation. When you ask someone for something, it's called dua al-mas'ala. So if you ask someone to help you, you're invocating, invoking them, you're calling them to help you. When you're asking Allah for money or wealth or health, dua al-mas'ala, you're asking. Number two, dua al-ibadah. This is a type of dua in which you do an act of worship like salah, or name the ibadat that we know. And this act of worship, your devotion to Allah through it, you're hoping for the bringing of benefit and deflecting harm. In other words, you want to go to Jannah, you want to stay from Jahannam. So when you pray salah, it's dua al-ibadah, even though in it there's dua mas'ala. Fatiha, you're asking Allah. But when we see someone's praying, what does a person praying want? He wants Allah to give him to Jannah, he wants to stay from Jahannam. He's hoping Allah to forgive him. He has hope and fear. This is a type of dua. So here we know that when we hear the word dua and ibadah, mas'ala, they're together, they come together. Ibn Qayyim writes beautifully in Bida'i Fawaid. He says, قال الله تعالى ادعوا ربكم تضرعا وخفية. Call upon your Lord with humility and submissiveness. And Allah says, ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها وادعوه خوفا وطمعا. In these verses, he combines between both. Allah mentions both types of dua. So one way to remember this, when you hear dua in the Quran, it includes both. The dua when you're asking Allah, or asking sometimes even other people, just dua. But when we're talking about Allah, dua and mas'ala, when you're invoking Him directly, or the dua by way of the ibadat you're doing. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, he says, the difference between the two is when you're asking Allah, dua and mas'ala, you're asking Allah directly for something. For to save you from Jahannam or to grant you something. And dua al-ibadah, when you do an act of worship Allah legislated, hoping for His reward and fearing His punishment, this is dua al-ibadah. The reason why this is important, Shaykh al-Islam bin Taymiyyah says, look to the Quran, anything the Quraysh they did. When Allah talks about dua they did, is both. Dua mas'ala wa dua al-ibadah. They were doing both. They're asking the deities, they're the dead or the idols, and they used to pray to them at the same time. Like do worship for them. So when you see Allah criticize the Quraysh, what they're doing both types. They ask them sometimes, and also they're doing ibadah to get closer to them so they can ask Allah for them. The reason why the scholars spend time explaining these two, dua belongs to Allah. That's the origin, dua al-ibadah. But we know you are allowed to call other people within a certain framework. Like you ask someone for help, or to give somebody, call someone to come to you. So therefore, we need to qualify what Shaykh al-Islam said here. Whoever takes between them and Allah an intermediary, what does this mean? So we have to say there's dua that belongs to Allah and a dua to other than Allah. So what is the one that's not allowed? Dua to other than Allah when it's shirk. And here we're going to go and look at the categories. Scholars they say dua to other than Allah is 7 categories. 7. And before getting there, you see this? If someone today did dua to other than Allah, can we make takfir of them? Just like that, with the 7 categories. We have to tafsil. And this is the difference we mentioned before between Ahl Sunnah and Ahl Bid'ah. The Khawarij, they don't care. Someone dua ghayr Allah, kafir. They don't even make tafsil because what's their job? They want to take people out of Islam. We're going to ask the question, what kind of dua you did? What do you do? That's the question. Why? Because making hukum on somebody, you have to first know what they did. Far'an tasawwuri. What did he even do? And that's a very important lesson for many people, because when you hear people talking about takfir, you see them, they don't do anything of tafsir. So if it comes in detail, our job is to do investigation. First one, calling on the creation, when you make dua to the creation, for something only Allah can do. What is this considered? Major shirk. That's number one. Asking the creation for something only Allah can do. It's clearly shirk because that goes against the rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to mention also, why you directing the ibadah to them? Because you know only Allah can do. So rububiyyah here is in trouble. So this is major shirk. Number one. Asking the creation for something only Allah can do. Number two. Calling on to somebody who's alive and is capable of doing what you're asking them. So they're alive, hayy, and they're qadir. They're capable of doing what you're asking them. What's the ruling on this? Permissible. This is jais, mubah. You're asking somebody to come help you, and he's in the street, to come help you fix your car, just broke down. Alive, and he's capable of fixing it, inshallah. But you don't know, but inshallah, you hope. So this is allowed. It's allowed. Most of us doing so. No one's going to say shirk, du'a ghayrillah. No, we're not going to do that. Number three now. Calling on other than Allah in a manner in which you have the utmost humility and love and fear and hope. So you're calling upon other than Allah, but you have it in a way where you have ghayatu hubb, wal khudu' wa raghba wa rahba. This is only for Allah, right? Remember dua, what is ibadah again? Utmost love and utmost submissiveness. So imagine someone's calling out to other than Allah with this kind of manner. Utmost love, utmost submission. This is shirk. Major shirk. Because you're not asking them normally, you're asking in the way which is dua, al-ibadah. When you do ibadah, every ibadah Allah legislates encompasses what? غاية حب والمحبة والخضوع. So imagine someone made dua to Allah in this manner, which is, again, it's not common. This will be shirk, major shirk. Because the manner in which he's doing it is un-Islamic. So the reason why the ulama mentioned this, if someone were to do that, then this will be shirk. Number four, calling to someone who's alive, calling on someone who is alive, but they're far away, they can't hear you. They're alive, but they're far away, they can't hear you. What's the ruling on this? Major shirk. Why? You think this person can hear you. Why would you call someone far away to help you? Car broke down, you're calling someone in China. No, you're not physically calling them, you're yelling out, so-and-so help me. How is he going to help you? So the ulama said this is major shirk because, number one, the person calling assumes the person is all hearing. What kind of sabab are you taking? Well, how is it possible your call is going to reach that person? Number two, you may also have the belief, the person may also have the belief that the person is calling to has power to control all things and actually help him. So he has a aqidah here. That's why the ulama say if you're asking for somebody, they have to be not only present, alive, capable, but near. Yani. And the dua has to be also out loud. We're studying the kitab Tawheed, not hidden. So some people, we see them, something's wrong, he's mumbling to other than Allah. Allah's the one who can hear all things. Why is his voice low? How can the person hear you? This is shirk. And it's a fa'idah we took before. Every shirk fil uluhiyyah is accompanied with a shirk fil rububiyyah. Every shirk in uluhiyyah comes with shirk rububiyyah. You will never see someone calling to other than Allah except he believes something wrong about that person. So you find them calling to this person because he believes the person can help them. So here we see that the person cannot be far away such that you can't hear them. Because Allah who is Sami', Allah is all hearing. Allah who is Mudabbir, He's the one who controls the universe. Number five, calling on other than Allah with the belief that the person you're calling to is independent of Allah. You think this person is mustaqil, is independent of Allah. Again, this is major shirk. Because whoever believes anyone is independent of Allah, this person has committed major shirk. Allah is the only one who is independent of anyone. Allah huwa al-ghani. Us, we're in need. Allah huwa samad, He's self-sufficient. We're fuqara, we're needy. So again, if someone does this, it's major shirk. Again, how would you know this? You need proof. You can't assume. Someone has to tell you or something comes out that this person believes this. Number six, calling on the dead to remove harm or fulfill the need or fulfill a need. This is major shirk. Calling on the dead directly to help you bring a benefit or to inflict harm or to give you something. It's major shirk because the dead people are not able to help you or anyone. They are dead, they're in the barzakh, they're not able to hear you, They're not able to help you. They don't have any more good deeds. So that's it. And scholars say then the person who does this, by calling on to him directly, is attributing a type of rububiyyah or a type of from the lordship of Allah to other than Allah. And number 7, making dua through the status of the Prophet ﷺ or the status of others. Bijah, using the status. Oh Allah, I ask you by the honorable status of Nabi ﷺ. What is this? This is bid'ah. Not shirk. Why? Because you're asking Allah, but in the wrong way. You're taking the wrong tawassul. Tawassul, we said, what does tawassul mean? Taking a wasila means to Allah. You have to do it the Islamic way. This is called tawassul mamnu' or tawassul bid'i. This is a haram way of getting to Allah. Because you're asking Allah, that's tawheed, but the wrong way, the wrong method, wrong formula. Why are you asking by Allah's messenger status? Why are you asking by the status of so and so sheikh? This is a mistake. Now, why is it not shirk? Because you're not asking them. Du'ahu al-ibad. You didn't ask them, you're asking Allah, but the wrong way. So someone has to avoid that. And the ulama say that it's not correct because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is his status, and his status belongs to who? Him. When you're doing tawassul, how do you do tawassul? Either the action you did, or through the names and attributes of Allah, or asking someone alive who is present to ask Allah for you. When you ask the Prophet ﷺ through Allah through his status, ﷺ status, that's not your action. It's action Allah, it's a status Allah gave Nabi ﷺ, so it doesn't count. It's clear, it doesn't count. It's not yours action. You're not asking about his name. First of all, you're going to ask Allah's names. And the Prophet's status is something Allah gave him. So the one who gave him the status, ask him. So is it clear? That's why it's an innovation. Because it came later. People started doing this because they thought if I ask Rasulullah by way of his status, Allah will help answer my dua. And what's wrong with this? If this was good, لو كان خيرا سبقنا عليه. Salaf would have done it. They never did it. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali never did that. They would know the best way to solve it. What's the best way to do it, to tawassul? You want to get closer to Allah? Do it the right way. That leads us now to the next point. Shaykh Islam did not mention it, but it's connected. Al-Istighatha. Al-Istighatha and dua have a relationship. Dua is more general. Al-Istighatha means to ask Allah to remove difficulties. So when you do dua, dua is in times of difficulty and times of ease. That's called dua. But when you ask Allah in times of difficulty, we call it al-istighatha, talab al-ghawth. You're asking for help in a distress. So let's say something bad has happened, you're asking Allah, this is called istighatha. When things are okay, there's no problem, generally you ask Allah for something, this is called dua. Dua is more general. Istighatha is dua, but every dua is al-istighatha. All 7 categories apply to the istighatha. It's the same thing. It's the same thing because all of this is the same bab, it's the same chapter. So we're going to learn at the end of this lesson al-istighatha, wal-du'a, wal-shafa'a. So all of these are the same because they all revolve around talab, seeking. So it's easy to remember that way. So the ulama say whatever I just mentioned, the 7 categories applies to istighatha. If you're asking other than Allah, but what's the etiquette we should be doing? When in time of distress, you should be calling towards Allah. But if you ask someone to help you in a time of distress and they're capable, alive, and able, this is permissible. Let us move now to Ash-Shafa'a. Shaykh al-Islam then says, a person takes the intercessor, وَيَسْأَلُهُمُ الشَّفَاعَةِ, and he asks them for intercession. Here, the scholars say Ash-Shafa'a, what does it mean Islamically? It means to put someone between you, or to take someone as a means to get the benefit or deflect harm. So it is literally the same as the idea of wasa'id. You've taken someone بِجَلْبِ الْمَنْفَعَةِ وَدَفْعِ الْمَضَرَّةِ. So you're just taking someone or you're going through somebody to get some benefit or deflect harm. Ash-shafa'a. So ash-shafa'a involves talab, asking. So scholars, they see ash-shafa'a, and we studied this already more than once, but just to review, is of 2 categories. Intercession is of 2 categories. Number 1, the one that's legislated or considered acceptable or is considered established. And number 2, the one which is not established, is rejected. So here the ulama say that the shafa'a, it's seeking or taking intercessor to bring about good or deflect harm. The legislated one has 2 conditions. has two conditions. If you want to know the shafa'ah is correct, there's two conditions. Number one, Allah's permission. There's permission from Allah that you can do this. You can seek this kind of intercession. And when we say permission, what kind of permission are we talking about? Al-idhin al-shar'i. Al-idhin al-shar'i. For those who remember, idhin al-shar'i is legislative permission. Allah permitted you to seek intercession in this manner. Not idhin al-kawni. Example, universal consent. Example, somebody goes to the grave. Allah didn't stop him from going there. Then he's asking the person to help him. He's going to say, look, Allah permitted me. Allah, if it was haram, He would have stopped me. I'm going to say, Shaykh, how many types of idhin are there? Universal idhin is Allah's permission. Allah may allow things to happen in the universe to test us, bad and good. The one we're looking for is the Quran and Sunnah. Where in the Quran and Sunnah says you're allowed to do that? So the reason I'm mentioning is because the people of deviance will tell you that. We have idhin kawni. If Allah didn't want us to do it, we wouldn't go there. It's like the Quraysh, right? If Allah didn't want us to shirk, He would have stopped us. Is it dunya dar ibtila? Come on. Right, where are they going with this? So this is their doubt. So what do we tell them? Idhin shar'i. Man dalladhi yashfa'u indahu. Who can the permission legislatively permitted you? So the benefit we take, Allah has to give you permission from the Quran and Sunnah. You have to be allowed to do this. And number two, Allah is pleased. Allah's pleasure. Allah is pleased with who? Both the intercessor and the one being interceded for. So Allah is pleased with the person and the one who's doing it. Again, we find this in the Quran and Sunnah. The proofs for this. So the kafir, for example, we cannot intercede for him Yawm al-Qiyamah because Allah says, فَمَا تَنْفَعُهُمْ شَفَاعَةُ شَافِعِينَ. There's no benefit for the kafir for the intercession Yawm al-Qiyamah. طيب. So the legislation or the intercession, we covered it before. And the scholars, they say there are 7 categories of the legislated or the acceptable intercession. 7. Ibn Qayyim and Shaykh Islam al-Taymiyyah, they mentioned 7 categories. We're not going to mention all of them because of time. So what is the one that Shaykh Islam is talking about here, the one that's wrong? The one that is wrong, which is considered a nullifier of Islam, when you're interceding in a denied method, in a rejected way. And what does this mean? One of the 2 conditions is absent. One of the 2 conditions is absent. So you're seeking intercession from someone in an unlegislated manner. Allah never legislated you to seek permission from this person, intercession from such a person. And you're doing it for someone who Allah is not pleased with, or from someone who Allah is not pleased with. And remember, the categories we're talking about here is which kind of shafa'ah? Dunyawi or ukhrawi? Which one is this? Ukhrawi, we're talking about qiyamah, we're not talking about dunyawi here. Because there's shafa'ah in the dunya. You want to get a job, you send your friend, right? We're not talking about that one right now. We're talking about this is all to do with akhirah. So the reason why it's important, because when people are going to the graves, what is he doing? The guy who goes to the grave and he's asking the dead, what is he doing? He's asking the dead person to ask Allah on his behalf to allow him to go to Jannah or forgive him. What's wrong with this? As we're going to see now, the ulama, they say this is what Shaykh is talking about. This is not right. Because number one, when you went to the grave, where is the permission for that? You don't have the idhin shar'i. Where in the Quran and Sunnah you're allowed to go to that dead person and ask him. And number two, you're asking the person, and this person, is Allah pleased with him to be intercessor? You don't know. You don't know. So the problem, both conditions are missing. Especially the first one. Another example, you go to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this is the one they're going to say, look, Allah is pleased with him. What's the answer? Yeah, but you didn't got idhin. Idhin shar'i. Where did the Quran and Sunnah says go to him when he dies and ask him? So you see how the trick here, they're going to say, Allah is pleased with him. Yeah, he has shafa'ah yawm al-qiyamah, not now. So if you go to him now and ask him, no idhin. Where in the Quran and Sunnah says that? And if someone says, but he has permission, yawm al-qiyamah, not now. So you're missing it. That's the point. Today we have to explain to people this, because they're not understanding that when we talk about intercession, they're thinking that you're crazy because you're preventing something which is known in Quran and Sunnah. Not in the manner you're doing it. Now leads to now a big question. This is very important to pay close attention to this one. Now the ulama, they differed below now at this point. Seeking intercession from the dead in the following manner. By going to them and asking them. So we're not asking them directly for something. You're asking them to ask Allah. Or you're asking them to intercede on your behalf to Allah. We just said this is not correct. But some of the ulama said it's bid'ah, not shirk. And the reason why we have to explain this now is that later when you look at the other books, because نواقض Islam, كشف الشبهات, all the way to the end, this is going to come again and again. The people of innovation who do this, what are they doing? They're not doing what the Quraysh did. The Quraysh who used to do ibadah, dua al-ibadah wal-mas'ala for the idols, hoping by doing that the idols would then ask Allah on their behalf. That's clearly haram, right? Allah says it's shirk. They're not doing that. What they're doing is they're going to the dead person, it could be wali, it could be anybody, and saying, oh so-and-so, ud'u Allah li, ask Allah so-and-so for me. What's the difference? He's not asking that person, he's asking that person to ask Allah. So some of the ulama looked at it and say, well, this is different than the surah, the way that the Quraysh used to do it. Is it still shirk or not? The first opinion is shirk akbar, it's still shirk, doesn't matter. The first opinion is still shirk akbar, didn't change. Why? Because you're asking them something, you're still asking them. And that's why you find this view from Shaykh Abdul bin Hassan, Shaykh al-Islam's grandson, and his son, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, Shaykh Salih Sindi, many of the ulama, past and present, they hold the view. Asking the dead mutlaqan, unrestrictedly, is shirk akbar. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you hear the other ulama saying the opposite view, don't be surprised. It's Bain Ahl Sunnah here, not Ahl Bid'ah. Ahl Sunnah is differing here. What is the first opinion? Asking the dead unrestrictedly is haram. You can't ask them anything. Whether it be to help you, or to do intercession for you, or to bring you something, not allowed. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِن تَدْعُوهُمْ لَا يَسْمَعُوا دُعَاءَكُمْ. If you call upon them, they don't hear your dua. وَلَوْ سَمِعُوا مَسْتَجَابُوا لَكُمْ. Even if they were to hear you, they couldn't respond to you. وَيَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يَكْفُرُونَ بِشِرْكِكُمْ. Allah called it shirk. So that's the ayah they use the strongest proof. Allah called it shirk. دُعَاءُكُمْ shirk بِشِرْكِكُمْ. So here they say clearly, you ask them to ask Allah, shirk. Don't ask them anything. Second reason, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانُ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ عَنْهُ عَمَلُهُ. When someone dies, his good deeds are cut. Why are you going to somebody then? He doesn't have any good deeds. He was with me. When you go to the dead, what are you supposed to do? Make dua for them, not ask them for dua, right? Right? No, we're supposed to make dua for them. Not supposed to go, it's supposed to help me. We flip the script. It's the other way around. Okay. The second group of scholars, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, one of his speech indicates this. They say it's bid'ah because they say this wasila, it's a wasila is shirk akbar. It's not shirk akbar because number one, you're not doing dua and mas'ala. You're not asking them in the way that you're asking only of Allah. You're asking them in the sense that you're asking them in their life that they're in. So they're saying that they're high in a different world, obviously in the hereafter. But you're asking them to ask Allah, not asking them directly. So you're taking them as a means, not taking them as the ends. And secondly, they say that Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah especially said this, it's a bid'ah. Because we didn't see something like this before. Truth be told, it should be avoided. Absolutely, right? You should avoid it. And it's closer to say the stronger opinion is the first one. But today, some of the ulama, they say that if someone did this, you have to figure out what was he doing. And you see now where the issue of takfir becomes problematic. If someone today was at the graves making dua to the dead, what's the first thing we're going to ask them? What are you doing? Yes, he's doing something wrong, but you see what we said before. Takfir, if it's in chapters of tafsir, detail, la yajuz, it's not permissible to make itlaqat. You can't do unrestricted takfir then. The difference between something, we said last week, we said there's some actions which are kufr by themselves, throwing the Quran on the floor, cursing Allah. Those ones, some ulama said, no iqamatu hujjah. All you have to check is the shurut wal mani'. Check the preventives and the conditions. So someone takes the Quran, he throws it on the floor, this is kufr. Bila shak, no doubt. Only thing I'm going to ask him now, is this guy sane? Is he so angry? I'm going to check the conditions and preventives. As for iqamatu hujjah, say you don't need that. Now someone else, opposite, somebody else making dua to the dead. First thing you have to do, iqamatu hujjah. He has doubts. Second thing you have to do then, check the preventives and the conditions. Three things then. But because a lot of people are ignorant, sometimes you have to establish the proof anyway. A lot of people don't know these things. But today, instead of doing this, some people, you see someone making dua at the grave. Back home, it's everywhere, right, brothers? Sisters, everywhere. We can't just make takfir the whole ummah. If we're getting where are they getting it from? Where are they even getting this from? And that's why you have to make tafsir and also do due diligence. Today we have, like I said, the Khawarij, they have no rahmah ummah. Everybody's out. Right? They took everybody out, including themselves at times, because they don't understand that people who are doing this have doubts. They don't believe this. If you look at their Nواقض Islam, they don't know tafsir like this. Because they believe that this is not allowed. Someone who does dua Allah, mushrik, kafir. We tell them, is it all the same? Didn't we say there are different categories? The reason why this is important is to help you be more careful. But not to say that if you take the first opinion, it is. So if someone is making dua to the dead, we can say it's kufr. or shirk akbar. But they still have to make sure that the person is not knowledgeable about this. Because he might tell you, I heard so-and-so's view. I take so-and-so's view. Or this other, again, the Sufis, they promote this kind of thing. To finish, the last thing Shaykh al-Islam mentions now. So now we can see that when it comes to this one, right, there's a slight difference of opinion. But obviously going with the view that shirk akbar is still not allowed, safer and stronger. Let's go to the last issue, tawakkul. Putting trust. He says if you put trust in them, it's also considered a type of kufr or major shirk. What does trust in Allah mean? Scholars say if someone has trust in Allah, at-tawakkul, it means having the truthful reliance of the heart upon Allah in bringing benefit and deflecting harm alongside taking the means. And we've studied this before. صدق الاعتماد على الله في جلب النفع ودفع الضر مع فعل الأسباب. To really have a real, sincere, truthful reliance in your heart upon Allah to bring you benefit and to prevent harm. That's the first part. To put trust in Allah has to do with the heart and the actions. The essence of it is that it's an ibadah qalbiyya, but it also has a component of actions. So in your heart, you solely put your trust in Allah to bring about the good and to prevent the harm. But what you're also doing is you're taking the actions to get you there. The scholars, when they looked at this, some of them, they said there is no such thing as tawakkul ala ghayrillah. Some ulama, they say there's no such thing, it's only for Allah. Because they say this is the action of the heart. But many of the ulama say no, there is such thing as putting trust in other than Allah with categories. And to understand this, when you're putting your trust in Allah, you have something of the heart and something of the action. Something you do with the action, something you do with your heart. Let's look at the categories. Category 1, at-tawakkul al-shar'i, the legislated one, where you put your trust in the heart. Sincerely, your trust is with Allah in your heart by believing Allah can only bring about the good. Allah only brings about the evil. All outcomes of everything come from Allah. But I also take the permissible way to get there. So an example, I have a test tomorrow. I study, fi'l asbab. And then I write the test, I put my trust in Allah, I pass or fail. Everything's in the hand of Allah. That's tawakkul. Now I study, I have to pass. It doesn't work that way. And people who have that wrong relationship, they get disappointed very quickly. Right? If X doesn't always equal Y. If you do the 7, you're not going to get the result always. You have to remember it's the hand of Allah. So that's considered ibadah. When your heart believes only the outcome of good or bad is with Allah, we're taking the proper means. Number 2, the tawakkul al-shirki. The shirk version of tawakkul, where you put your trust in the creation. And how is this done? By you relying upon the creation in something only Allah can do. So you're putting your trust, you're actually believing or relying upon other than Allah for things only Allah can do. Example, you're relying upon someone other than Allah to give you children, to make it rain. And you're not taking any asbab anyways. So there's no means you're taken. Just in your heart, you believe that the rain will fall due to other than Allah. And this is haram. And if you think someone other than Allah can make it rain, right, as a final cause, this is shirk. From that example also, going to the dead people and asking them, as we said, putting your trust in them, the dead people, putting your trust in them, that they're going to relieve you of your difficulties or bring you benefit. Right? So again, because you're relying upon them and you're putting between them and Allah, you're making it equal. Now the third category, you're putting your trust in the creation and something that they can help you in. They're capable of doing. Like somebody putting his trust in the ruler or the employer to provide him money or give him a job. But this person, when he's putting the trust in them, he's putting the trust more in the cause than the causer. Yani he's more relying on the cause than Allah. So this is shirk asghar. This is minor shirk. Because you have put your reliance on the creation more so, because your heart is more inclined to them than Allah, the one who is the final outcome, who does everything. And you find many people are here. Many people are here without realizing it. They're so confident that someone's going to get them a job, forgetting it's on the hand of Allah. You can't. Your heart has to be reminded of that. And that's the power of tawakkul, because it strengthens you at times of difficulty and also gives you a reminder when you fall short, everything's in the hand of Allah. So it's not major shirk because you're putting trust in the person for what they can do, but your heart was too inclined to them, the means, instead of the one who does it. And it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who brings everything. But if you were to put your trust in them and something they can't do, it becomes major shirk. It changed now. Right? So difference between this person, you're allowed to ask him, you're allowed to say, okay, he's going to help me, but I'm too much invested in that instead of Allah. And that's why the Muslim, whatever happens, you make dua to Allah. You have to remember, that's why tawakkul is in time of difficulties. Usually you find your trust of Allah is going to become clear, because then you're going to see who you really rely on. And the last category is not really to do with tawakkul, it's to do with the affairs of dunya. Al-wakala. Al-wakala is trust, to make somebody your wakil, a trustworthy, a trustee, or a helper, or an agent for you. In ahkam fiqhiyya, in the fiqh rulings, we have something called al-wakala, sending somebody as an agent. So for example, you want to go do business, I can't go to that country, I send someone so to go there for me. He becomes my wakil, I'm doing wakala, he's on my agent on my behalf, he does the business, he brings back the money, we share it, or I pay him for the services. A wali is trapped in one country, can't travel, he wants his daughter to get married in another country, what does he do? He can appoint a wakil, or he gets his brother, or his family member. But if there's no family member, okay, so-and-so is going to become my wakil. Wakala is permissible in Islam, and this has to do with more to do with fiqh. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he bought one day Urwa bin Ja'ad, anhu, as a wakil for him to buy him some udhiyah for the meat animals for slaughter. So from here we can see that tawakkul, when it becomes shirk, when you're putting your trust in other than Allah, that which only Allah can do, or you're putting your trust in others for that which they can do, but you're too inclined towards them and not Allah. So the person who, in that case, is minor shirk. In any case, Shaykh al-Islam says, whoever does any of these things, this is considered shirk or kufr. He says, kafar ijma'an. What he means by this is then, whoever does one of these, takes the intermediary and puts a trust in them, in the way we explain, or calls upon them in the manner we explain, or puts a trust in them the way we explain, this is a nullifier of Islam. And that's why we have details. Hence, if someone fell into these, we'll have to then go through the details to ensure if they're kafir or not. So we have to keep repeating the principle. Anyone who falls into one of the nullifiers of Islam, we only make takfir of them after the fulfilling the conditions and the lifting the preventatives. And in many cases also, iqamatul hujjah, establishing the proof. That's the rule of Sunnah Jama'ah. He's going to keep repeating, because someone may study this and he's making takfir of people. Where is he going? He's going no to ayn. He's just going 0 to 100. And that's why you find people when they're studying this book, nobody's differing a lot on these topics. What we're differing is on the application. And that's why the book, Shaykh al-Islam's book, is supposed to be a book to help you, not to weaponize it to do takfir on people. So inshallah, these two becomes clear. And next week we're going to take a look at the third one. I don't have any quick questions. I think there's one from last week. Someone asked a question about the issue of, we talked about the slaughter. And we said that if somebody slaughters other than Allah, and they do the wrong jins, the wrong type, so when does it become shirk, or when does it become wrong? It has to do with when someone is slaughtering and doing dhabh as an ibadah, taqarruban. In that case, if it's an ibadah, it has to be the correct jins, the right animal. As for slaughtering for eating, you can do any jins of hayawanat, is halal. So the difference is udhiyah. Udhiyah is ibadah, so it's what kind of dhabh? Dhabh al-shar'i. If it's dhabh al-shar'i, you have to do the conditions. And it's important to know, any ibadah, in order for me to accept it, what do you need? 2 conditions. What are they? Al-ikhlas wal-mutaba'a. What does mutaba'a include? 6 things. 6 things. If someone says, I did this thing in the sunnah, 6 things. If you want a book on this, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, Risala, he has an excellent book on the bid'ah. You have to read that book. He talks about the 6 things to count as sunnah. Number 1, jins. You have to do the ibadah in the right jins. Then right miqdar, amount, right time, right place. Right? So these are the categories you have to come with. And the reason he mentions these things, right, that if someone does all 6, then it's mutaba'ah. Example, I prayed Maghrib, the correct way, the wrong time. It's bid'ah, or invalid. You prayed Maghrib, Dhuhr time, not Maghrib. I don't care if you started with takbir and you did everything right, it doesn't count. Someone did Maghrib 4 rak'ah, miqdar is wrong. Someone did udhiyah, he did chicken. Sorry, jins is wrong. Someone did Hajj in another country besides Mecca. It's not Hajj, right? Doesn't matter. You did 7 tawaf. The makan is wrong, tamaman. So you have to read the Risala. It's in English. That's important because most of the people, this is where the bid'ah starts. Bid'ah fil wasf is called, not fil shara', wasf. How do you do it? A lot of us, when we look at the bid'ah, we have to understand what's going on. Today, no one's going to make up something. He's going to take something and he's going to add something to it. Majority bid'ah is fil wasf. So an example, Mawlid Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Why is it bid'ah? Someone's going to tell you, I did Mawlid, hubban Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I love him. We're going to tell them, this love for Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam legislated, but your action is not legislated. I'm not asking you for asl shara', I'm asking you for wasf shara'. What you did, how you loved him is wrong. I'm not asking you loving is bad, loving Rasul is good, but how did you love him? Fil wasf is wrong way. Why you loved him in a way he never loved others, how he never loved them. That's bid'ah. So that's why we have to study this risala, and it helps you to understand when it's bid'ah and when it's not. But before going there, if I did a dhabah for my restaurant, I can slaughter anything halal. But if I'm going to do like udhiyah or a hadi or nadar, it has to be the right animal. That's what I was talking about last week. Hopefully it becomes clear now. Allahu a'lam. Any quick questions? Yes? So the brothers ask, people, we tell people don't call upon the dead, and they're going to tell us, read the ayat and the hadith and about they're alive in the hereafter, the barzakh, right? So we're going to hayat. Is the different types. Hayat dunya we were talking about, not hayat barzakhi or ukhrawi. So the hayat we're talking about the hayat that is between us here. Why? Because the person in another life in the barzakh, between us and him, barzakh is a little barrier. He can't hear us. He doesn't know what's going on. And so when you call upon the dead, the first assumption is they can hear you. And the origin is the dead can't hear, except with exceptions, the exception times, which is when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, for example, when he threw the martyrs of Badr into the well, that was an exception. Sorry, martyrs, the dead of the Quraysh into the well, that's an exception. So the problem you find today, okay, I'm going to go to the dead, I think they can hear. That's not right. Second thing is, I think they know what I'm saying or they can do something for me. The actions are cut off. So we're talking about hayat in this life, not the next life. And that's a qiyas ma'a dunya wal akhirah. There's no qiyas in amur dunyawiyya with ukhrawiyya. You can't do that. Another problem also, you find a person calling upon the dead, he forgot the person in the qabr not only cannot help himself, he can't help you, forget about himself. So when we look at the ayat, they're reading, what is it saying? That they're in the hereafter, yurzaqun. They're being provided for, not providing for others. So at the end, you have to explain those assumptions. That's why when you explain to them, then they get cleared. Oh, subhanAllah, the person can't hear me. An example, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when we say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, how does he hear our salawat? The malaika, they come sayyahin fil ard, they take it to him. If Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam can't hear our salawat, what about this guy in the qabr? Why so-called wali, he can't hear us. If Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the malaika have to tell him, so and so make salah for you. But the problem is that the assumption, that's why we have to explain to them, because you're right, there is a kind of confusion there, and that's why they do what they do. Wallahu a'lam. Yes.
Hadith, someone says to their brother, "O kafir," and if they were truthful, how will the statement be earned?
So the hadith we talked about before in the beginning, whoever calls their brother kafir, scholars have more than one interpretation. Number one, if you call your brother a kafir wrongfully, number one, either you're going to get the sin of that takfir, because calling someone kafir is not kafir, it's a sin. And number some a major sin, right? Because it's serious, you kick him out of Islam. And number two, that you're going to be tried to become a kafir later in your own life. Now, see that? You're going to one day, and you find that the Khawarij, make a takfir people himself is out of the deen. And what does the hadith say? They're going to go out the arrow, right there, hits the, right. That's why many ulama, they believe that the Khawarij are kuffar. Some mashayikh believe that. Again, it's a khilaf issue. But why? Because what happens to them and what they do takes them out of Islam. But imagine today, brothers, we have to be honest. How many people we see them in the kafir shops? This guy's kafir, that's kafir. Doesn't pray himself, nafsul kafir. Himself is kafir, doesn't pray salah. Sometimes they fall off the deen totally. I'm telling you, brothers, right now, many of them. And that's why we have to deal with this sickness. Some people today, they're extremists and the wrong place, they get out of the deen. So that's one interpretation. That's enough to scare us. So that's what the ulama say, hold back from takfir, even if you believe it's right, because what if you're wrong? So that's one of the two interpretations. I want to make it easy for us. Yeah, yes. Yeah, as hadith sahih, they give the glad times disbelief. That Shaykh Al-Albani authenticate ahkam janaz. Yeah, so you're allowed to do that, because generally that's one of the evidence scholars say anyone dies about disbelief is going to Jahannam. So that's generally the proofs to use. Yes, yes. Say it again? Yes, we're going to get to that inshallah coming up. But throwing the Quran on the floor, this type of istihza wal ihana. So we're going to see these actions where you mock the deen or you belittle the deen. This is one of the examples we're going to look at. But ijma' the ulama. But this again with this condition that you know it's the Quran, the person is not like drunk, he's not extremely angry. So we're going to see that these kinds of actions, how dangerous they are when it comes, I think, in number 5, I think, or 4. Yeah. Yes.
How should one deal with people who are part of LGBT, call themselves?
So this is a big issue. LGBT issue of someone believing it's halal versus someone who falls into a sin. The origin of Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we believe anyone who does a major sin, believing it's a sin or doesn't believe it's halal, it's a major sin. We don't make takfir of them. But if someone does istihlal, says it's halal, and we're going to get to istihlal later, what does it look like? Then this is kufr. So the problem we have today, how would you know? That's the question of istihlal. So we're not going to become like the Khawarij. Someone who's musir ala dhunub, he's making istihlal. No, we have to be more careful. Doing an action doesn't mean you believe it's halal. For example, alcoholic or a drug addict, is he saying it's halal to smoke or drink? He's a sin. He's stuck in the sin. So we're going to see that there has to be things that we have to look at. And that's when you find people like this, you have to converse with them. And you have to help guide them. Because it's a sin. It's a sin, right? But it's very important that we don't just jump and say kufr. Because this is the problem today. We're finding people, they don't make details in terms of when is something is a sin or not. And we're talking about something which is not kufr fi nafsihi. So for example, someone drinking alcohol is not kufr fi nafsihi. Versus the example I gave, taking the Quran and throwing it on the floor, is kufr fi dhatihi. That's different. So we're going to get to these examples. Allahu alam, yes. So it's permissible to make dua to Nabi to Allah to ask to see a good dream or to hope to see Rasul in a dream. So Sahaba, many of them, they will see him in his dreams. Some of them will hope they will see him. So generally, because it's bushra, it's a good tiding. So Aisha used to make dua to see a good dream. Anas would say, I saw Rasul in a dream many, many times. So you hope it's something good. But it's also, we know if you didn't see Rasulullah in a dream, it's not a bad person. And some people because he comes, someone might see him, he's not a good person. So it doesn't, so it's not, but it's the point we have to say good dreams. We hope that Allah give us good dreams. Yes, brother, in the back, yes. Yeah, so this is permissible to go to someone who's alive, who's present, capable, and ask them to make dua for me. And the proof of that, the Sahaba used to do to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's alive. After he died, they didn't do anymore. And the same thing, we tell people to make dua after going for Hajj or Umrah or you can do it. Some of the Musafir, it's permissible. Yeah, so but the point is, but what's not good though, all the time you do that. I ask, you make dua yourself, Sometimes some people, they think their dua is not accepted. If you're doing something that's preventative, maybe you have to stop that. That's probably the first thing they look at. If you think your dua is not accepted, what are you doing? But you have to be balanced. Ask other people to make dua for you, because maybe their dua will accept it with you. Or you could also make dua for them behind their back, and inshallah will answer your dua for you too, right? Inshallah, last question, yes. So the scholars, when they differed about going to the grave and asking them to ask Allah for you. So this is, they say, talab al-shafa'ah, and taking a wasila which was never seen before. Whereas the Quraysh, what were they doing? Dua mas'ala wa dua al-ibadah. They used to literally worship the idols, hoping by way of this worship that they will ask Allah or they will get closer to them so they can do it for them. So it's a surah has been a little different. Second thing they said, when this kind of dua, you're asking them to ask Allah, you're not asking them. So the problem, though, the other scholars say that, but you're still asking them. So the other group of scholars say this is talab. If it's talab, you're asking the dead, it's considered dua. And you're asking someone who can't help you, so shirk. So the real problem is this a wasila or is this actually a request? That's the difference. So the problem, obviously, we see that when you understand the issue, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah has statements on both sides. But Shaykh Salih Shaykh has a nice explanation. He says that even if Shaykh al-Islam called it bid'ah, then it's bid'ah shirkiyah. It's a bid'ah shirkiyah. It's both. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because if you find some of our ulama saying this type of one they differed, we're not going to then take this and say, they're rejected, and we're going to not make takfir of someone. Because one of the rules we're going to see, making takfir of people has been something agreed upon amongst the ulama. You see how now it's getting more complicated. Imagine now there's somebody who has a different view on you on this, and you find someone who is, it fell into this. If one sheikh says he's not a kafir, and another one says he's kafir, the first thing you're going to see is difference of opinion between Ahl Sunnah. But imagine now you come and you make, no one make takfir the person, make takfir the sheikh who said that too. This is where we are today. Today we're making takfir of the shuyukh, the tabdi' of them, and something they did differed, and a person not even allowed to be takfir of the person. So the reason we have to understand this issue that you can at least see why someone is called different in this surah, but not the other issues that we looked at. So this is from the benefit to know, because if you don't know this now, later you might find someone saying so-and-so sheikh is this and that, and you're going to be shocked. Oh, the sheikh said something wrong. But just be mindful of that. It's just too good to know it. Inshallah, next week we'll look at the next one. Subhanaka bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.